I watched Second Wind's Doom, the Dark Ages designers think you're done. Design, delve. A couple days ago and thought, I get it. Doom idiot-proofed their new game, and someone who mostly talks about game design thought he would be a little cheeky and give it some shit. What I didn't think was that it would be made into a Under the Mayo response video. I probably should have, given he's been defending the series for practically the last 5 years. Whether or not that defense was justified doesn't really matter. Let's just dissect Under the Mayo's response to Jay and Ludo of Design Delve. Let's start off with the place where Mayo gets into what I like to call internet autism.
You want players to be able to walk past this upgrade and end up soft-locked?
I call it internet autism, not because I'm trying to imply that Under the Mayo is autistic. It's just a general term I've come to use because it's more about sort of finding these ultra-focused points, like when Mayo uses the footage to make a point that no good faith critic or normal person would pick up on. To be fair, the man, Mayo, seems to be more honest about it than a couple of other people I've seen really to utilize this internet autism that I'm seeing in this video, at least by implying that maybe somehow it's a error in the editing. In fact, that's going to come up a couple more times.
This is why I wouldn't hire a video editor even if I could afford one, because you end up making yourself look like a tit with your own footage. But let's put aside this one horrible visual example.
Mayo cherry picks 13 seconds of the video that he's supposedly responding to for over 2 minutes in a section of the video titled, "You should be able to soft lock yourself," apparently. Low-key admitting that his reading of a combination between the words being used and the visual example on the screen probably wasn't intended, but it could have been. Maybe. That's what I get from the apparently part. I can't be sure if his audience picked up on that. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not really sure. But maybe there's a bit of projection going on because I don't know where in the intro section of the video that compares the target audience to dogs. My best guess is Mayo is talking about this bit.
Oh, you're pumped for Doom the Dark Ages, are you? Well, yeah, you're the perfect demographic, aren't you? Well, no, I don't think you're dumb, but the designers of Doom might think you are. Let me explain.
And you know, Mayo might have a point if this dog, Ludo, wasn't used in every opening bit for the series. See, this might not be known to people who just watch YouTube videos and don't make it. Sometimes we like to tell jokes or use certain themes throughout videos. Sometimes they can be misinterpreted, like this apparently seems to be done. Why it's not in the video in the pinned comment section, I think is cowardice, but maybe a different reason for that. Because I've seen this weird sort of thing go around where some people will look for any excuse to get offended, no matter how media literate they seem to be with that offense. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all the internet autists out there are the complete right ones, but that is bad faith reading at the end of the day. And I'm hoping maybe on Mayo's side, all this ironic bad faith criticism is an attempt at humor and not really an attempt at pivoting as sharply as Mayo does here.
Let's extrapolate it onto the rest of the weapons. In Doom 2016, a casual player could easily overlook weapons they came across.
For the life of me, I cannot figure out how Mayo's point connects to anything Jay is talking about, at least in this particular section here.
First of all, the game leaves nothing up to the player's interpretation. Paths of progression are clearly signified by non-diegetic symbols telling you where to go and even what mechanic is needed to get past it. Now, I can forgive this if it's on a map.
Mayo somehow manages to distort what Jay is trying to say by having a little bit of elitism here, which will become funnier later on in the video.
Yeah, maybe you didn't overlook them. I didn't. Most people watching these videos probably didn't. But millions play these games, and I've personally witnessed people overlook important weapons and even forget weapons had alt.
You know, all this is interesting and all, but how does this relate to anything Jay is talking about here? I'll have to assume this is a opening bit, trying to be a little good faith here. Sort of like what Mayo could have done by offering that little section in Jay's video with. I mean, clearly it's longer and, humor is subjective. And this could be some sort of running joke he has going on between him and his audience that I just don't get. But yeah, it's like Mayo doesn't seem to know that the dog Ludo isn't meant to be an audience stand-in. It's just a gimmick of Jay. Or maybe he really has a dog, dead dog, and wants to bring it in spiritually. I don't fucking know the story behind Ludo the dog. Or maybe he's a dog lover or something and thought this would be a cool little gimmick to add to almost all of his fucking videos. And this one went awry on him via someone responding with internet autism.
But you really want to open your video with a clip complaining that picking up new weapons is part of campaign progression? Okay.
This here might be a hint that Mayo is just trying to be funny in a meta-ironic way. Because Jay doesn't even mention weapons until the 2-minute marker.
Really fucks with the vibe of the Doomslayer character as a whole. He has weapons that can rip through time and space and can punch through a demon's armored chest like it's a children's paper mache art project.
And this line from Mayo comes in at about the same time. So yeah, I can't be sure about this theory of mine that makes Mayo's bad faith criticism, I guess, a little bit better here.
Not only is what to do clearly signposted, so there's no sense of discovery or problem solving, but you can only climb what the devs see fit, only grapple where they tell you can do so.
So the key signaling. I don't care about this.
I can't help but laugh at that. Again, super steel man in Mayo here. This could be the key to Mayo's bad faith opening. A lot of people like using humor as an excuse to get the stuff away, but still, it's so lame of Mayo here, even if that is the case. Note how Mayo uses his thoughts about what a Doom game should be, in his opinion, of course, given he can't outright deny this. So instead, Mayo just minimize it with the
I think you'd have more of a point.
So Jay does have a point, and here
We already spend too much time here. I certainly didn't need another 20 minutes tacked on because I overlooked the location of the blue key, looking at a map with 15 secret locations, wondering which one has it. No thank you. And, excuse me, no sense of discovery or...
and there it is, the outrage. But is it real or just something he built into the script he made for this response?
No sense of discovery or problem solving? Many secrets are literally built around you figuring out your way in. They're marked on the map because if they weren't, these levels would take hours to find secrets.
And I have to admit, it's sort of funny that Mayo does these preemptive introductions of some of these ideas before actually showing the clip of Jay when he actually gets into talking about these particular matters within the game design of Doom: The Dark Ages.
And this extends to any and all interactions with traversal, all overly signified busy work that even at its strongest points when used to hide secrets, just break immersion.
Jay seems to be calling this the strongest points. Not quite sure what he meant by that exactly. If I was to steel man what he's trying to say here, because it is a bit vague, maybe Jay is saying that is where this particular mechanic comes in the most useful. Well, I can't be sure of that. It seems to be what Mayo's even hinting at here. I'll have to agree with Jay on this point at the very end, that it does break immersion. But it's not like every player cares about that. Also, I don't think the joke excuse works here on Mayo's end, even if the point was very unclear on Jay's end. This comes off as a bit dishonest from Mayo, given he's conflating an earlier point of Jay with one that comes on later on in the video. that might have been misread by Mayo. I can't be sure of that because, yeah, I had to play that section on my own. Also, unlike Mayo, I don't think I have any mind reading powers.
Weren't, these levels would take hours to find secrets, and then he'd be here complaining about pacing.
I have no clue how Mayo thinks this would have even come up. Jay's video is mostly talking about game mechanics, so maybe it would have come up, but instead of actually engaging with the criticism that is actually there, Mayo is just gonna assume the worst of other critics who have criticisms of a game that he really likes. And you gotta love the little segments that serve as the framing for the clips he's about to play. Like the one he goes over in Grappling points are terrible, I guess.
But this next part misses the point so badly, it's astonishing that this guy goes on to actually call himself a game developer.
That seems like a rather bold claim. Let's see what's so bad that Mayo had to hype up about how bad this makes Jay look.
Somehow mean that you can grapple to them. They just yoink you up from point A to point B.
So it looks like we might end up getting the section of the video where Jay actually goes over the secrets that Mayo preemptively argued, making it seem like Jay didn't talk about it at all or something like that, I guess. I'm just wondering, why not wait until Jay addressed that particular point? Wait, you know what? Never mind. I'll just wait a bit to judge that.
And considering these are never used in combat scenarios, they might as well have just been stairs for what they do mechanically.
Okay, first the snarky attitude behind his performatively bewildered, somehow these green statues let you grapple to them.
The classic insult sandwich. Insult him before the clip, then again afterwards to remind and prepare your audience for this next upcoming point.
It betrays his weird bias, where in the same video he goes on to talk about God of War puzzles. But in those same puzzles, it's not like it makes any more sense for there to be random gears that get frozen by the Leviathan axe. It's a video game puzzle mechanic, it's not that deep.
Okay, Mayo is taking a rather long time to get to his reasoning for this. I am starting to think it isn't Jay who has this weird bias, but Mayo himself. But let's see if this hype that he's been building up is worth it.
And this is what's shocking, considering this is supposed to be by someone who knows design.
Mayo sure made it sound like it was. I'm still waiting for it.
He implies that the absence of grapple points in combat makes them useless inclusions in exploration, that they might as well just be staircases.
Oh, he implies. How exactly does Jay do that?
Let me introduce our good friend to a concept I'm going to call mechanics reinforcement. Including something in exploration or puzzles that requires the use of a player's toolkit is not pointless just because the exact same thing isn't present in combat. These statues are not about teaching the player.
Is Mayo not going to explain that? Of course not. He's just going to talk like he's an expert on game design instead.
Puzzles to reinforce the mechanic. This is such a basic design concept, it's unbelievable that this guy doesn't know about it.
Jay might. I have no freaking clue because I'm not some mind reader. Also, I'm not going to assume something about someone I don't know much about based off of just one video. I've watched a few Mayo videos before. Why, there's been places I agreed and disagreed with him on. If I remember correctly, it's been a while. Last time, I think it was something about Sekiro, and I was questioning his thoughts on that. But let me not bring up other videos that might frame Mayo in a certain way. I'm here to deal with this video today. And with this particular video, I'm starting to notice a pattern here.
Since we're complaining that the bashable walls and boxes have markers on them, is he really saying that he wishes you could target and bash every texture in the game? That to find secret areas, we would have to try to bash every panel of wall across these giant maps instead of the ones that are indicated?
Yeah, not finding that in his video, but maybe this was all coming from the dog, and somehow Under the Mayo was hearing the dog whispering this whole time? I don't know, because really, if that's what Jay was actually saying, it would be easy enough to just play the clips where he actually does that instead of going on and on about what very little that actually has to do with what Jay is actually saying in his video. That being said, yeah, it seems like Mayo cut the whole section that he was totally straw manning earlier about finding the secret areas on these giant maps. And he did it by skipping to the God of War comparison, which is going to be interesting in a bit. So with his section that Mayo conveniently titled, "Did he actually play God of War?" Question mark.
Oh my god, this is so fucking wrong. God of War's puzzles were not about getting the axe stuck and forcing you to fight with your hands. That happens, maybe once in God of War Ragnarok?
Yeah, I don't remember Ragnarok being mentioned here. So why bring that up instead of God of War 2018? Maybe it's the internet autistic point again, that Jay showed footage of Ragnarok instead of 2018, and that's why Mayo is making this assumption here.
Wait, does this even happen? I can't remember it. The footage shows Kratos with the axe on his back, so I don't think this is the footage from the scene he's referencing. Oh, whatever.
What? You can't remember if happened in the footage? Yeah, it seems like it's that sort of point. But more importantly, even if Jay did,
there is no doubt about this man's insincerity after seeing him cherry pick the one time God of War makes you fight without the axe,
which I'm highly skeptical of. And why doubt the man's sincerity? Wait, that's the aim, isn't it? No, wait. Let's not make assumptions too soon, even if it seems like what he's trying to do. Trying to make him seem dishonest, because that's easier than actually debunking any of his actual points. Getting back to it, how does any of this invalidate Jay's point? Because this is seeming a lot more about attacking the man instead of attacking his argument or critique or whatever you want to call it. Because even if it was just done one time in God of War, no matter where, how does doubting his sincerity make anything Jay saying incorrect? I mean, maybe he is. I would just like Mayo to explain how any of this stuff actually even matters in relations to this point. Because even if God of War, no matter which God of War game Jay is talking about, does this, it could still be applied to Doom the Dark Ages no matter what. They can also do this crazy thing like use this sort of game mechanic even more than any of the God of War games. But Mayo can't even engage with this in theory, which is funny as hell given he's more than willing to make tons of theories about this guy, whose name is Jay, by the way, is in the description. It also literally takes longer to say this man than Jay. You know what? Doesn't matter. I'm not going to start theorizing myself based off of the weird choices by Mayo here. You can form your own theory on why Mayo would make such a choice for this particular video here yourself.
3 planks of wood. You can jump off a building with no issue but can't clamber over this 4-foot ledge to get the item I need. These are examples of every video game essayist's favourite term to throw around, ludonarrative dissonance. Not you.
Getting back into it, we get more of Jay's video, which I am including here, because we even learned why the dog's name is Ludo. And yes, this is rather lame and cringy as all hell, but neither of those equal wrong or incorrect in any particular way.
Believability of what the Doomslayer is actually capable of. By this logic, the best defense against the Slayer would be to fortify hell with a bunch of knee-high walls.
Oh my god, seriously, this guy. This is a silly video game and not a series of novels.
We get it again? Not that I disapprove of mocking people, it's just more Mayo seems to be doing so, a lot, instead of actually arguing with any of the actual ideas Jay's putting out there. And that's way more lame and cringe than Jay's bit about the dog.
Why can't Jill just break this wooden door with her shotgun? My immersion is broken. This video game doesn't make sense. Introducing this whole section on ludonarrative dissonance with an obviously sarcastic tone should have been the sign to keep this section of the video on the cutting room floor.
Some more internet autism from Mayo. And it does seem to be a common tactic in my experience from both fanboys and anti-fanboys alike to do this particular style of rhetorical strategy. You know, rather than engage with what's being said by the critic that they're claiming to cover, they do shit like this to mainly try to discredit the source rather than discrediting the criticism.
Quite literally, no challenge to be seen outside of combat. In fire trap timing challenges, you can simply walk around while they're still actively spewing flames.
This is not the only fire hazard, it is a fire hazard shown from the early chapters of the game, because he wants the most basic example of it to be the one that represents all of them in your mind. Look at his max health values. He's in the opening chapters, which are essentially tutorials.
Again, Mayo isn't engaging with what Jay's saying. Feel like I'm gonna repeat myself a lot on some of these. So he's having to rely on these made-up theories that seem more based on the footage than anything solid or what's being said. The shame of this is that Jay could totally be wrong here, but Mayo does nothing to prove that. So since he can't do that, Mayo has to resort to making Jay, someone he doesn't even use the name of, seem like he's being dishonest here, instead of actually disproving any of Jay's claims about the game. Something that I think Mayo desperately wants to do, given this particular next section here.
Maybe show the fire traps in the secret room in hell with the Arachnotron and Hell Knight in it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like dealing with traps in a combat situation. If not, Mayo fucked up with his script. I'm just gonna remind, this sounds like in combat, and in a roundabout way, Mayo's just confirming what Jay is saying about this to be correct.
Spikes protruding from the ground, static, motionless, that do nothing and can be destroyed instantly. If these things were introduced during combat as added challenges, I could forgive it, but they're all explored outside of combat, so what is the point?
You can hear in his voice that he's forcing himself to be upset about something, in his best attempt to mimic the tone of those cringy ragebait channels that get upset about every game they play.
Mayo can't deny any of these claims by Jay. So again, Mayo has to make shit up about Jay that he can't prove. Hell, the section is called Pretending to be Upset About Spikes. Mayo obviously has superpowers to know exactly what people are thinking. Yeah, I'm mocking him a bit with that. What else can you do when someone's doing such obvious bullshit? Also, the fact Under the Mayo manages to find a way to address the God of War section before this section really makes it hard to tell that Jay, again, flaw of the classic YouTube video essayist, at least when someone's responding to it, is trying to link these two ideas in his video together. More specifically, that's why he brought up God of War.
Absolute height of mechanical challenge outside of combat would probably be the doors you need to open by utilizing your shield. It looks familiar, right? Yeah, it's because it's directly ripped from God of War. Just as similar to having locked items that require you to find 3 hidden objects around the map that you have to throw your weapon at. Someone on the team clearly loved God of War a lot, but completely missed what made these things so engaging in the first place. When you threw the Leviathan axe, it would embed itself in a mechanism to keep a contraption open. It then removed one of Kratos' most powerful weapons, and they would then introduce combat so he'd have to fight with his fists while the axe was inaccessible.
Now, I don't even know if what Jay is saying here is technically true. I'm not a designer of games. Seems plausible enough when you think about it, but when you represent it in the way that Mayo did, you might not see how these two ideas connect. I don't know if this would have been a good solution to the problem that Jay thinks that Doom the Dark Ages has within its design, but I'm not going to take the string of ideas that Jay spits out and act like they're not linked together and deal with them in just a vacuum. Another thing I should make crystal clear is this video is mainly to see how well Under the Mayo does at responding to Jay's video, not trying to say Doom the Dark Ages is good or not. That Jay or Under the Mayo's opinion about this game is superior to one or the other. And since it's more about Mayo's response, wait, do I even need to say what I think about Under the Mayo's video? I don't even think Second Wind's Doom the Dark Ages designers think you're dumb. Quite a provocative name for a video in a lot of people's mind. By Design Dev, that's this guy Jay with his dog Ludo. Is that great? But it's being told from what I assume is a game designer's perspective. I'm not sure if that is 100% correct. I do know they are going to see game design in a different way than someone who's mostly a player, such as Under the Mayo would, and even me. And even if you agree with Mayo's opinion of Jay's video, is it more because you think Mayo's arguments are good? Or do you just think Jay's arguments are bad and stupid or whatever else? And sure, maybe Mayo's video is a good way to sort of laugh and mock those sort of ideas by someone like Jay here. But is this actually good criticism, or is it just good entertaining video from Mayo here for those who enjoyed it? Not sure, but I figure Jay's video was probably aimed at doing a little bit of both. But Mayo, yeah, I'm not really a guy to tell people how they should think or feel about a piece of media. And I'm not going to mind read either Jay or Mayo and say that that's what they were trying to do. Both video games and YouTube videos are both media, different types of media. With that being said, let's skip the titled section. I feel insulted by everyone, since it seems to be some more of what I criticized earlier on.
Full disclosure, I played on the game's normal difficulty, as I always do, to see what the developers consider a reasonable amount of challenge for the average player, and honestly, I don't know if they thought their target demographic was...
Sure, there seems to be some variations on it, like when Mayo gets back into the God of War little bit he had, but after that, the ideas within this section seems to be best expressed by that title. Mayo is making it seem like Jay feels insulted by everyone else or something like that, I guess, apparently. At least the next section, let's talk about weapon balance, shall we? Isn't completely brain dead.
Why didn't I use other weapons? Well, within a couple missions of finding this gun, I had it and the shield fully upgraded, so why would I intentionally make myself weaker if they're both capable of such brutality?
So this is at least an interesting topic to discuss, weapon balance. He says that he mainly just used the upgraded impaler and the shield for the whole game, and that using something else would have, quote, made himself weaker.
Jay did say that, but before he explained his reasons for that, which was something Mayo didn't include in his video, let me give some context for Jay's reasoning for that.
They give you this state gun that can effectively give itself infinite ammo when comboed with the shield, which you're gonna do because it can stun larger enemies, instantly take out smaller packs, and explode them as we mentioned before. And doing this empowers the upgraded state gun, making it capable of one-shotting most enemies, meaning the majority of my run was this Van Helsing cosplay.
Of course, Mayo has to replace this with something Jay didn't actually say. Hint, hint. I know he didn't say this, but...
I hope he's not suggesting that the upgraded impaler is stronger than an up-close super shotgun blast or a parry-charged rocket, which can put a cyber demon into daze in one shot. But sure, he felt one gun was powerful enough to carry him, and that's a fair thing to say.
Look at Mayo here, trying to act like he's being fair here, but he's not.
He mainly just used the upgraded impaler and the shield for the whole game, and that using something else would have, quote, made himself weaker.
So the question I would have for Mayo, or anyone who would agree with his reading of this video that he's supposedly covering, what weapon paired with the upgraded shield would give the same results? There might be many, but without even laying those out, this isn't a good comparison. This just seems to be a collection of whataboutisms that Mayo goes on about.
Person I see making this comment goes on to show a different gun. Oh, the upgraded Impaler is so strong, why would I use anything else? Oh, the upgraded Chain Ball is so strong, why would I use anything else? Oh, the upgraded Super Shotgun is so strong.
Mayo does this a few more times with different weapons, not weapon pairing, but never gives the reasons or logic that these other comments, that aren't Jay by the way, come to the conclusions they do. Just that they claim those are the strongest weapons, and move on to pretending to be the designer of the game himself. Or this weird ironic twist where he's acting like it for some reason.
Game is not designed around gun variety incentive. If this were a game about gun variety, I think you'd have more of a point. If a game's designed fun is around the use of all your guns, just being able to use one is a big design flaw. However,
There it is, that however, where Mayo asserts that he knows where the fun zone is.
Dark Ages is designed around your guns of choice, with all your other abilities in consideration. The fun zone of the Dark Ages is block, parry, shield toss, shield bash, melee, falter, reposition, and shoot.
Fun is truly subjective on the player, but design-wise, I don't know why that's being inserted into this. Again, Mayo is acting like he's the expert, why not even accurately portraying the argument that Jay was making in his video. And I love this bit where I'm guessing Mayo is trying to be nice about how stupid Jay truly is here.
If you personally don't find that fun, that's okay. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong to not enjoy it. We don't all like the same stuff.
Oh, isn't that nice of Mayo? He isn't trying to tell people they can't play the game wrong. They should play the game the way they want to, or something like that.
But you can't look at weapon balance in a vacuum and just say, all I used was X, and discard everything else you're doing, because you end up sounding silly.
But that's just silly. Jay didn't do that. Who's Mayo talking about here? The dog only he can hear? Or maybe those other comments he used instead of what was explained in the video that Mayo is pretending he's responded to here? Because I'm not sure.
It sounds really silly to say all I had to do was melee, bash, toss, block, parry, explore, upgrade, and shoot, and I beat the game. Yeah, that's the game. Could the balance be better? Sure.
This sounds a bit like Cope because Mayo has gone on so far away from Jay's actual point to defend things. It's sort of funny. Mayo seems to know there is a problem with the game that is definitely similar to what Jay sort of outlines, but wants to pretend that it's those who point out all these things who are the ones who are just crazy. And wouldn't it be shocking to know in this video that Mayo is supposedly responding to? Jay does talk about many of those things being mentioned here by Mayo, but I'll actually wait to respond to those things when they actually get to them, apparently. I think the video gets its best raw, angry video game internet autist moment in this video with the section, you can't one-shot everyone. We got rage at the editing.
A slog that I barely needed to pay attention to.
Again, the editing. Being able to one-shot most of them? No, you can't say that while showing footage of an armored mancubus, okay?
But he can, and you can't stop him. Unless you want to censor him or cancel him. Am I gonna pull a you mad bro moment here? Like Mayo's trying to do earlier with Jay? Nah. I just want to point out it reeks of desperation, and doing that in replacement of a counter argument is just pathetic. Also, because I know this is what a YouTuber would do, in case anyone out there doesn't understand, sometimes they'll emphasize certain phrases like, this is an insane take from Mayo. Am I mad about anything in this video? Not really. I might have sounded that way in a couple of sections earlier in this video, but I happen to know as someone who has written scripts before, though I usually throw a little ad-lib in there even when I do write them. And as you might know, most YouTubers, video essayists like Jay, but probably a little bit better than him from what I've seen, or not, depending on how you want to put it out there, will put in indications in their script to sort of convey how they should be expressing themselves with their words as they're reading them. And it's sort of like the illusion of choice in games. This tends to, sorry, I capitalized that on accident, give the essayist the illusion of sincerity and authenticity where they might not actually have any. Sorry about that. My caps lock key goes a little bit wonky when I write these things. On the flip side of that, people who are too unemotional or talk flatly without most emotion will generally get people calling you an actual autist or something else. So sometimes they will emphasize different things like different emotions, just like Jay said, most enemies. I said most emotions, just like Jay said, most enemies, man. It says, say in a panic tone of voice in my script there.
Enemies you can't one-shot, especially with a charged impaler. Mancubus, Whiplash, Cosmic Baron, Witch, Agadon Hunter, Cyber Demon, Armored Anything. What are you talking about?
So Mayo lists 8 types of enemy that you can't one-shot out of how many now? I count 32 enemy types, not counting the bosses. I would have to say, even for the internet altist out there, like Mayo, or at least how he's portraying himself in this video, who like to cherry-pick certain things and disregard others, that isn't even really wrong, and fixating on that instead of the argument that's made in its entirety, basically the spirit of the criticism, yeah, like fluffy bullshit, that sounds like most could easily apply to this here. And I'm not going to address the rest because Mayo's back to this bad faith internet autism points that I see as a way a lot of YouTubers I've seen like to distract the audience from really noticing how they either change the argument the person that they're responding to is making in their video, or by not addressing it at all. Quite an interesting trick I've seen. I've probably done it myself. I try to avoid it for the most part. Now, if you hate how devs and most YouTube essayists talk about video games, you might agree more with Mayo's take here. And if you hate how fanboys and internet altists respond to videos, well, you probably won't be watching this video or Mayo's video at all in all likelihood. So this is sort of a moot point because unlike real autism, internet autism seems to be a learned behavior. It just acts and tends to function much in the same way as real autism does. That's assuming the YouTuber isn't actually autistic, which I'm sure is a possibility. I wouldn't actually try to take a guess at that. That level of armchair psychology ain't my bag of tea, despite me actually having a degree on it, but that's just me. But frankly, in reality, I'm not talking about either one of these people. It may have sounded like I am, but I don't know them. What I'm talking about is who they come off as in their video, at least in this case. Sometimes you can go through several videos of a YouTube content creator and try to build a better profile and understanding of how their content works over time, evolves over time, blah, 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 but that's not this here. Some YouTubers could come off very thoughtful and respectful as a person for one entire video. And in the next video, they could sound up like a drugged up madman ranting about nonsense the whole time. Personally, I think it's stupid. It can be informative to sort of understand how these videos are made by different people and the different tricks and tips that they do, but it can also be a fun thing to do every so often. Hell, even if I have many moments that make me come off as an internet autist myself, the streams are a good way of checking myself on that to make sure even I don't go too far with it. Sometimes you need to just sit down on the grass and talk it out, because frankly, I don't think people should really be slandering and talking too much serious bullshit about people online unless they're willing to, try to understand the other people's position, even if you disagree with them. But, that's just me. And does any of this work? I'll let you judge that for yourself. That said, I am done.